the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
August 28th, 1963. It is one of the most famous speeches in history, and hearing it at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute only gives Martin Luther King's words greater power and meaning. I'm Mark Istook, and this is the Dream Job Podcast, and I hope you caught episode 11, where we met Charles Woods, the outreach coordinator and education manager at the Institute. He talked about his work there and about the importance behind lessons from the civil rights movement and how they resonate today as much as ever. If you haven't heard that episode yet, I do hope you will go back and listen first, because one of the cool things about my time with Charles was getting the chance to go behind the scenes with him to see the Institute and its exhibits. I hope you'll forgive the audio. It was a bit windy at times and often tough to get everything clean and clear with some of the background exhibit noise. And even though you can't see the exhibits, I hope these clipped together highlights from Charles give you a sense of the power of this place and the impact of the civil rights movement on all of our lives. We get started as Charles greets a tour group outside the Institute.
All right, is that the rest of the bunch? Is that everybody? All right, can everybody hear me? Yes. All right, my name is Charles Woods. I'm the Education Programs Manager here at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. I'm also the Outreach Coordinator. So what we're going to do today is, the way you all are going to start off your tour, you're going to watch an 8-minute film about the history of Birmingham as a whole. In that film, that screen is going to raise up, then you all will start your self-guided tour. Now mind you, this statue right here with a bird on the head, right? I've never seen that all the time I've been here. But that is a statue of Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, okay? Not Martin Luther King Jr. I'm not trying to take anything from Martin Luther King Jr. We got a statue of him over in the park, all right? But this statue of Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth is there because Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth is the reason why this building is here. And he was the leader of the civil rights movement here in Birmingham, okay? So when you're going through the gallery, wherever you see Shuttlesworth, you might want to pay attention to that, okay? And I want y'all to get something out of this. So yes, this material is a little dark. Yes, it's gonna make you feel a certain way. That's all purpose and by design, okay? Because if we don't ruffle little feathers, you all are not gonna remember what you saw here, okay? But I don't want you to rush. We do have roughly about a whole hour, but I don't want you to rush through this because I want you to get something from it. So if I'm hanging out at the end of the gallery and I see like you came through in about 10, 15 minutes, something like that, I will ask you a question. That you will have to go back to those galleries to find that answer, okay? And I'm pretty sure that it's gonna be about Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth. I don't know. This kind of sounds right? So I will escort you all up. We will get going. Once again, don't rush through this. Get this information. I guarantee you, once y'all come throughout these galleries and y'all get this information and y'all go back home and you let somebody else know what you saw, you are now the authority, right? Because you went and you saw it. They didn't, but you got to impart that information to them, okay? And that's why you got to get something out of this. All right, can y'all do that for me? Yes. Good.
As the group departed, my time with Charles inside the Institute exhibits begins.
Well, we always start with, you can kind of lean in here and see it.
Oh, wow.
We start off our exhibit with this. So this screen, this is a movie. We show a short film about the history of Birmingham as a whole. This screen raises up, and then this is the first image that people see before they walk into this building.
So since people are hearing this, they can't see it. It's two water fountains,
right?
A white water fountain and a colored water fountain.
Exactly. And when you think about when you think about segregation, this is the image that comes to mind, right? That colored and that white drinking fountain. And then what we get, when we're giving tours, what we get people to understand is that the law that came down to make things separate but equal, that was Plessy versus Ferguson out of New Orleans, right? The whole concept of separate but equal is asinine. And then we use this as case in point. These two drinking fountains come from the same water source. So what does it matter which one I drink out of, right? But this was not about the races. This was about keeping one group of people in their place and what the society thought that place was. Ronald McDowell, he was a foot soldier of the movement, who's also an artist, and this is one of the many pictures that he did for the Institute that we have around here. And it's just kind of...
Is he painted this on the wall here, this mural?
Well, it's actually, if you look at it, it's actually a giant...
Oh, huge, like canvas.
Canvas, yeah. Right, that they were just kind of end up putting in place.
And what are we seeing here?
So we always, when we have young groups come in, young people, we always bring them in here and we ask them, like, what do they see? So, you see people crying, sad, upset. And what we want them to understand is that these are children. And they're feeling this living in a city like Birmingham at that time because you were denied all of those things that you wanted to do. Like, they used to have a petting zoo at the fairgrounds, but black kids couldn't go there. So you driving by there every day, you see the Ferris wheel and all these things that you can't partake in, So Dr. King talks a lot about that in his mountaintop speech, about his children asking him, well, Daddy, why we can't play at the so-and-so, and him having to explain to a 5-year-old child why you can't play there just because of the color of your skin, and them trying to understand that. So we bring the children here to evoke, for them to tell us, the adults, the different emotions that you see, and what do you think they're thinking, and what do you think they're feeling, and then as we bring them in here and we start talking about some of the barriers that were established to keep blacks from exercising their full rights, this is where we start getting into some of our content. Yeah, so then the next section that we like to talk about when we're dealing with segregation as a whole, which is in our first galleries, the Barriers Gallery, is the functioning of black people on the city buses. So black people had to get on the front of the bus, pay their fare, get off the bus, and then enter onto the rear. And it took me years to understand why that was the case. So our education consultant reiterated to me that at this time, Birmingham was the most segregated city in the country, okay? Every aspect of life was segregated. These are some of the segregation ordinances of the city of Birmingham.
I just want to read this here. Section 369, separation of races. It's unlawful to have a restaurant or other place for the serving of food in the city at which white and colored people are served in the same room unless they are separated by a solid partition extending from the floor to a distance of 7 feet or higher, and unless a separate entrance from the street is provided for each compartment.
Right. So
come on.
So look, a wall like this in the middle of your establishment, just to be able to serve both races.
Can't be 6 feet. Can't be 5 feet. Got to be 7 feet or higher.
7 feet. And separating. So that means you got to have an outside entrance for both sides and all that. Most businesses were not going to do that, right? That costs money. You got to get permits. You got to get building. Nobody's going to do that. So what they did was they created what ultimately became what we now know as a drive-through, right? But then it was just an outside window that people like this young lady can come up to the window, order her food, take her beverage or her drink or her malt or her sundae or her pie, and go elsewhere to partake of that. She couldn't do like these couple right here and sit at the counter and have a beverage. It just wasn't going to work like that.
I mean, it's like when you come in this exhibit, you're walking back in time.
Yeah, and they purposefully do that to take you back to how Birmingham was between 1920 and 1950, right? So our scope is 1954 to 1968, but we have to go back before that, right?
Yeah.
Just to get all of the info. Right, you just got to understand what led up to what, right? Just a few more things.
Yeah.
I always point out, I'm not going to go in there because it gets really loud, but the reason why this church scene is in the middle of this gallery is because at this time, the church was the center of the community. And we always have to point out that Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth is the man here in Birmingham. No knock on King. Mm-hmm. Shuttlesworth brought King to Birmingham in 1963. But Shuttlesworth was the leader in Birmingham, and he became that leader of the civil rights movement in Birmingham by creating the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. And that organization was created in 1956 because the success of the Montgomery bus boycott, the state of Alabama outlawed the NAACP from being able to function in the whole state. So to not lose the momentum of the movement, Shuttlesworth created the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights just to keep things going, right? Because if we stopped or we lagged or whatever, who knows where we would have been, right? So just to keep things going, he created that organization, and those 60 churches were part of that organization. Now, at this time in Birmingham,
the church next door, one of them.
It surely was. Yeah. I could point it. It's in the third quadrant to the right there, right? 16th Street also being one of the hubs of the movement. That's why they were targeted for the church bombing, which also occurred in '63. So '63 is a hotbed year. So what you're hearing in this section is you kind of matching up the quotes to the people in this section. It gets a little loud. That's right. So one of our many nicknames, Birmingham.
Not Birmingham, Birmingham.
Birmingham, right, with a B-O-M-B. From the 1940s to the 1960s, there were 50 unsolved bombings in the city of Birmingham. And at all those bombings, the only loss of life was the 4 little girls at the 6th Street Baptist Church.
Wow, that's remarkable, by the way.
Yes, that is. And then you can see some of these images of what these bombs are. They weren't playing. And this being a still city, dynamite was very rarely, available.
Easy to come by, yeah.
Easy access. One of the guys that ultimately went to prison for the 6th Street Baptist Church bombing said he would just drive around with 16 sticks of dynamite in his trunk like that was no big deal.
Just a regular Tuesday.
A good pothole he could have been done with.
Yeah.
I always like to point this out. This is the reason why Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth became the man here in Birmingham. They blew up his house on Christmas Day, 1956, literally with him in it. He makes it out a little roughed up, but unscathed. And they did that to kill him, to keep him from testing desegregation laws that had came down saying that segregated buses were now unconstitutional. So to keep him from getting on that bus on December 26th, they blew up his house on December 25th. But look, he's still on that bus the very next
Christmas.
day. Very next, yeah, this is a very Merry Christmas, right? Now, I consider myself to be a pretty tough guy. But if you blow me up literally one day, I think I'm going to need at least 2 weeks before I get back in the game, right? But not Fred.
Shuttlesworth was there the next day.
The very next day, he's on that bus, and he's testing those laws. And he was one of those kind of people that he didn't believe in let's letting it kind of die down or whatever. He wants to get it while the fervor is going. Right here, I'd like to point out one other quick thing. These are women who refused to get up from Montgomery buses before Rosa Parks. Okay, so all of these women refused to give up their seat before Rosa Parks. And what you kind of ask yourself with that is, well, why didn't we build the movement around these individuals? And the easiest way that I can say that is that the community loved Rosa Parks. She was already working with the NAACP. She had a really tough job with the NAACP, logging sexual assault cases where black women could not take that to the police. So she would log those cases and keep a running tally, all the way to the point where they boycotted a grocery store of one of those. He was the owner of the grocery store who sexually assaulted a black worker, and they boycotted him until he was out of business. So when they saw that Rosa Parks got arrested and refused to give up her seat, they were already passing out flyers before she even made bail to start that Montgomery bus boycott. So they just loved her to the point where you could build a movement around somebody like that. Voting rights is a very important part of the civil rights movement. I was one of those people that, your vote doesn't really count, And then when I started working here and I realized all of the things that the system at the time tried to incorporate to keep blacks from voting, if your vote doesn't count and it's not worth anything, why did they try so hard to keep you from doing it? And that's why I kind of realized, your vote does have that's your voice. And that's what this mural is showing, that if you don't have a vote, you have no vote. You have no voice in this country. So you see their voices being muffled by the flag because voting was very important. I believe that this section right here, this is the Project C Children's Crusade section, is the most important section in this gallery because it talks about how young people were able to affect change in the movement, and not just little change. I mean, the Children's Crusade was probably the most successful civil rights campaign of them all. They filled the jails, they got concessions, and they were able to do it in 8 days. So you had over 7,000 children arrested in those 8 days, and then they were able to desegregate downtown Birmingham, a city that was segregated. And you read the ordinance. Everything is segregated, and they were able to desegregate downtown with the effort of these young people. And this is also where King got arrested, and he wrote his famous letter from a Birmingham jail. Yep. These are the bars that he was behind.
You got to be kidding me. These are the actual. These are the took them actual, from the jail.
These are the actual bars from the jail cell that King was in when he wrote his famous letter from a Birmingham jail. So this is probably one thing we shouldn't have anybody touch. We want everybody to touch it. This is history right here that you can't get anywhere else. And this is just showing what these children had to go through to ultimately affect that change that we were talking about. They were fearless, they were dedicated, and the goal was to get arrested. So it became a game almost, you know. Yeah. But when Bull Connor decided he wanted to try and stop these children from what they were doing, he didn't realize that he probably gave them the greatest win ever. So he brought out the dogs and the hoses to stop these young people with what they were doing. But those images of those children getting shot with those hoses and those dogs being sick on them went around the world. And it almost solidified the the Civil Rights Act being passed, and then the Voting Rights Act being passed. It also led to King winning the Nobel Peace Prize, as well as getting this new fervor behind the Civil Rights Movement.
Then on Friday, thousands of youngsters in school continue the march.
We land of liberty and we are saved. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring, and if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring.
I mean, hearing this every day, hearing that speech and seeing how people respond to it.
Man, and then when you get some of the backstories, like working here, you get these backstories. So, you know, Fred Shuttleworth passed away in 2011. So all that time where the Institute was still getting his feet on the ground and he's here. He's talking to people. Like, I have a story in my boss saying he had to pick him up from the airport in Atlanta and bring him back to Birmingham. And it's just both of them in there, and you just asking them questions and, you know, getting all these backstories. So, like, for the March on Washington, King wasn't set to give the I Have a Dream speech that day. They had did a speech at 16th Street Baptist Church maybe a week or two before the March on Washington. Mahalia Jackson, the great gospel singer, sang at 16th Street for that speech or whatever they did a couple of weeks ago. So when it came to the March on Washington, Mahalia Jackson had just got through singing. She's sitting down. King is coming up to speak. She says, "King, tell him about your dream. Tell him about your dream, King." And Martin Luther King Jr., being the great mind and scholar that he is, that he should go down in history as one of the greatest American scholars as well. He doesn't get that credit a lot, but he's a very intelligent man. He took the speech that he had, tapped it like that, pushed it to the side, and from the top of his head, did the I Have a Dream speech. Now, that's what we know him for today, right?
I mean, that one of the top 3 most famous speeches, and I mean, I'm guessing here in American history.
Easily. And then, you know, part of the thing that we do in America is that we kind of confine people to 3-word sound bites, right? Obama is yes we can, right? Malcolm X was by any means necessary. King got I Have a Dream. So my question is, that speech that he was supposed to give, if he would have gave that speech, what would we have, you know, what sound bite would we have locked him into then, right? Those are the kind of questions. And working here, walking through here every day, seeing these things every day, reading stuff. I stop and read stuff all the time. I've been here 2 years. I ain't read everything in here yet, right? That's where my mind goes. Sometimes to the what if. What if King gave the speech that he was set to give? Where would we be? What would his legacy be, right? Would it still be I Have a Dream? Would he be considered a dreamer? right? Those are things that we kind of lock King into, thinking that he was maybe disconnected from reality. You know, they make him be a dreamer. So I just had those kind of questions just walking throughout this gallery. And it's something new that you come across every time.
The fact that you do it every day and that you still walk away with those questions and those ponderances, I mean, says a lot about why this job works for you.
Why it is my dream job, right? Just being immersed in this history on a daily basis is, to me, is great. And then being able to impart this that I've learned not only in my studies in college and just reading, growing up with my mom, but being able to get some of this information since I've been here these 2 years and then impart that information to young people. I love it. I'm a teacher. I'm like a glorified uncle, but I'm a teacher, right? So, you know, as a teacher, you got to write lesson plans. You got to have all the stuff ready. You got 150 children that you're responsible for. Well, with this, I get to come. I get to teach on subject matter that I'm passionate about, that I love. And then I get to get them all in a frenzy, and then I get to push them on back to the teacher, like, you know. Here they are. I got them all sugared up.
Plays with the nieces and nephews and says, go back to mom.
Right. You get them all sugared up and happy and in a frenzy, and then you send them on back home, right? I love it.
Oh, man, this is great. This is great stuff.
Let me point this out to you really quickly, too. So this is our Fred Shuttlesworth Human Rights Award. Every year we have a Fred Shuttlesworth Gala where we give this award to some person in this country who was doing excellent work in the human rights era, and in the human rights arena.
See John Lewis, see Vernon Jordan, Danny Glover.
Eleanor Holmes Norton. Just last year, we had to make more room on this thing. We've given so many away, but just last year we recognized Harry Belafonte, and Viola Luizu, the young lady who was killed in the Selma to Montgomery March, young woman from, I believe she was from Chicago. Excuse me. So we'll have one coming up again in November. Excuse me, not really sure who we're going to give it to yet, so I don't want to, spill the beans or anything. Okay. But once we figure it out,
I'll have to check in and see what's up.
Yeah, please come check us out.
After our tour inside, I talked to Charles about getting to watch him interact with guests of the Institute. It's cool getting to see you interact with them, because it's one thing to see your enthusiasm as we sit in the library and chat or walk around the exhibit, but to see you interact,
it's totally different.
The guests, it's like
my family wouldn't even know who I was.
Yeah,
like for real. Like I'm such an introvert that you wouldn't even know it, as you see me interact. But I'm an introvert that likes extroverted situations, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
So it helps me a lot with not staying in that introverted box, because you can stay in that introverted box. You kind of go in your corner. I got a little cubicle that I could work at. I don't never have to see anybody if I don't want to, unless I have an outreach or something like that to do. So I love being able to be extroverted when I need to be, but I'm an introvert at heart. Like my son, he's part of we have a program called the Legacy Youth Leadership Program, where we teach high school students to be docents for the galleries upstairs. And my son went through that program. My wife asked him one day, she was like, his name is Charles. She said, Charles, how was Daddy at work? He was like, Mama, you wouldn't even know who this man is. Like, he's a totally different person.
But see, yet again, I mean, that's why this is the dream job.
Oh, yeah, it is. It allows me to do just about everything that I like to do, that I feel like I'm good at, and I get paid for it. I mean, what
else can you ask? Right? I mean, we talked upstairs about Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech, but maybe that's part of why it's enduring. Is that concept of whatever the dream is? I mean, maybe that's what makes. You talked about when people think, "Oh, he's a dreamer; it's not realistic." Maybe that's why it's so good and pervasive and penetrating. Is that if dreams were realistic, then you would just land someplace.
Right.
And if a dream is not, then you can always continue to keep striving, because you're never quite going to get there.
Exactly, and that's where we are. We are still striving to fulfill what his dream was, you know. And people use it as a soundbite. You know, I mess around with the children all the time when I say, you know, I ask them, I said, so what's the most important line out of Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech? And I'll be like, don't say I have a dream, because it's always the first thing that comes out. And then after we get past that.
I have a dream?
Right. So once we get past that, it's the line where he says that one day my 4 children will not be judged by the content of their character. I mean, not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And we're still trying to live up to that right now, you know? So these people that are dealing with immigration, I was trying not to go there, right? But these people that are dealing with immigration, these people that are dealing with these different issues nowadays, you're not basing that off of who they are, their character, right? You basing that off of what they look like, right? Where they're coming from, all of those outside persona things that we're not supposed to look at people as, right? We're seeing that today. So we have a long way to go to live up to Martin's dream. But if we are able to live up to his dream, man, this country would be 100 times better than where we are right now. And mind you, he did that in 1963. So forward thinking, scholarly mind, dreamer, whatever you want to call him, if we're able to do what his ideal was, we're moving in the right direction.
I think you're helping us get there.
And that makes me blush. You know, like,
your part, man.
As dark as I am, you got me blushing, right? But I like to think that I'm making my contribution, you know, and that's another thing that makes this be
doing your part.
My dream job is that not only am I making a positive difference, but I'm doing it by doing something that it's just me, you know. It's just who I am anyway. If it wasn't the civil rights movement, I'd be talking about this, I'd be talking about that. But the fact that this subject matter helps me make that contribution to his dream to help dial this country forward, that's like even better. That's like icing on the dream job.
50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summit of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. we cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our body is heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulation. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities. Knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. And every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, my country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last,